There you go. Hello, everybody. My name is Conor McGilligan. This is your instant match reaction. Leeds United 0, Newcastle 0. Listen, the watch-along was very stressful. We were kicking every single ball. We were making every decision. It was stressful. It's before the international break, and you were thinking to yourself, my goodness, can Leeds United get a result? I have to say, everybody, overall, the stress induced with Leeds United, we all watch it and we all react to it in different ways. I am very, very stressed when watching Leeds at certain points, as a lot of you could tell from the watch-along. But I was kicking and I was screaming at everything. And look, that's because you're passionate about your club. You absolutely love everything and you loathe everything that, goes against it. But let us know what you think in the comment section below. This is your instant match reaction. Really happy with that. Have to say, really happy with that. Let's have a quick look at the live score table right now, and let's see where we are on the Premier League standings, which is all important, of course. Sunderland getting a win today as well, which is interesting in itself, but Leeds in the top 10, which if you were to say to me, and these are the facts, if you to say to me, in the first 3 games, Leeds United were to pick up 4 points against Everton, who won again today and beat Brighton last week. Their only blemish has been against Leeds United. Arsenal and Newcastle, 2 teams who are in the Champions League. It was a woeful performance last week, horrendous performance against Sheffield Wednesday, but there was a reaction today, and I thought it'd be a 20-minute spell. I genuinely did, but Leeds United matched Newcastle today. Newcastle had players out, but we had our midfield out. You've got Ampadu out. You've got Tanaka out. You've got Okafor with a little bit of a niggle, although he is on the bench, so you would expect him to feature. But do you know what that'll do? That will absolutely do, and I'm happy with that. I completely take that. Now, look, I don't want to get into, I don't want to bog down and have a look at the negatives as such, but I guess when we're looking at the scenario that Leeds United are in right now, we've got 2 days till the window ends. You've got Parag there, you've got the board there. They have got to look at that going forward. And I genuinely believe, everybody, if we'd have had, in those transitional moments where we were getting behind their midfield, Anton Stack was driving forward, you had Longstaff at points driving forward, Jayden Bogle, who was brilliant. My man of the match. Excellent, excellent. Again, Jayden Bogle. But I thought he wasn't Premier League, everybody. Don't know. Weird, isn't it? He's been one of our best performers so far in the Premier League. Driving, inverting into that middle. That was points where Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes were split between. We were splitting them out, and they are 2 of the best midfielders in the division, and they had a very good midfield today. Jacob Ramsey coming in for Joe Linton is still a mega midfield. One of Aston Villa's best products of recent times, and they had to sell him for PSR reasons. That was an unbelievable deal for Newcastle. Bringing him in, who was excellent, absolutely excellent against Liverpool, I thought, the other night. Bringing him in for Joe Linton is serious depth. Bringing Harvey Barnes on, bringing Alanga on. I don't care if you've got players out. You're bringing that on. Brilliant a lift for them before the start of the whistle. The start of the game as well. Fabian Schär was fit. Alanga was fit. So big pluses. Obviously, they're missing that guy up top. But I think when you look at Leeds United overall, and you look at how the game ended, and look who's on the pitch. Look who's on the pitch. Gruev, with the greatest of respect. Aronson, Harrison, James Justin. It's not ideal, is it? Even Strauch at the back, who I thought played okay today. But, you'd probably likely have Beal in there, wouldn't you? We'd all want Beal in there. But overall, when you kind of look at it, and I'm not going to deep it too much, but if the board are there right now, you've got to go and get attacking players, because there was a genuine opportunity for Leeds United to beat them today. They were not. I thought we made them. Look, they look pretty average. I thought they were a little bit disconnected. The front 3 was a little bit here, there, and everywhere. Jacob Murphy, Asula, Livramento looked like he was playing wide left. It's not like a normal Newcastle side, but they've still got way more quality than us. Way more quality. All those 3 fit into our team. So that's how you got to look at it. But 4 points out of 9 for that start. We have had the hardest start of the promoted teams. The hardest start. Maybe you could argue Burnley have had a tougher start than us, maybe, but I would say ours has been a little bit tougher, because I think I would have rather played one of the promoted teams over playing Everton. You look at it like that. So, yeah, no, I'm happy with the point. It was just so glaringly obvious that I think we could have won that game. I personally, genuinely believe we could have won that game. We had opportunities between their midfield and their defence. I felt they looked vulnerable at points as well. And there was opportunities for us. There was opportunities for them. Of course there was. And if Isak was playing, it might have been a different game, but he wasn't playing. If Volta had been playing, it might have been a different game, but he wasn't playing. But on the other side, if we'd have had just players in that attacking third who can make a difference, this is why I'm absolutely talking about Gus Harmer. He'd have made a massive difference there. We're talking about Bilal El Khanous. Massive difference there. You know, Buonanotte, I know he's gone, but massive difference there. You've just not got the connectors. We get to that point and it's like, what do we do now? You know, you look at James and you look at Nonto. That first half, it was, you got to points of which you're behind Newcastle's midfield, and then it's a bad ball, it's a wrong pass. It's not just those two either. It was Stat playing maybe a little bit of a heavier pass. But it is what it is. They need investment. Leeds have to get investment because they can't just stay up getting point. But the positive is, overall, that is a really decent point for Leeds United. I think we battled for longer than we did against Arsenal. I mean, 100%. There was more intensity there. There's more verve and vigour from Leeds United, but we just have to bring players in. There's got to be investment in that attacking line. You cannot be looking in the Premier League at bringing Jack Harrison on, who I actually thought was decent, and you guys know what I think about Jack Harrison. But Jack Harrison, who I thought was decent, and Brendan Aronson, you can't be doing it in the Premier League for for 35 games that we've got left. You cannot do it. The quality just isn't there. Harrison is a backup left back, fine. Justin came in and did okay when he came on as well. Little touch on Perry's kicking. Feels like maybe we need to improve on that. It's been sort of in his first 3 games. I think that kicking is problematic, and the only reason I'm saying that, everybody, is because we're hit on transition a couple of times when his kicking would be picked up on by the opposition midfield. But let's touch on some of the positives. I thought Longstaff was immense. I thought he was absolutely immense in that game. I thought in his duels, I thought his pressing, I thought he was all over Bruno and Tonali. Every time there was a 50-50 to get there, it felt like he got in between it and actually won it in and before. Tonali, I actually thought, when you're looking at it as well, Gruev, I thought was okay. He was all right. He was okay. I think 7.1 is slightly generous. And the only reason I'm saying that, everybody, is because I thought in that game, maybe the little bit more of the risk takers were your likes of Anton Stack and were your likes of Jayden Bogle from an attacking sense. I felt Longstaff was the combative breaker up of play. I felt Gruev was the tidy player who, kept it moving and does what Gruev does. It's not to be harsh on him. I just didn't think he was amazing. Nonto was probably the biggest threat in the first half, but I didn't really feel it clicked for him as well. Dan James is really, really struggling, I feel, at Premier League level in terms of finding his feet. But do you know what, everybody? I feel overall it is just, we all know it's missing something. It's just missing attacking quality. Now, Okafor was on the bench today. If you're on the bench, you're fit enough to play. 100%. I've always been told that since I was this high in football. You're on the bench, you're fit enough to play, and that does live to its standard of professional football as well. So I think how Farkas saw it in this game is, I'll bring Harrison and Aronson on, of which I don't really know why you couldn't have brought Okafor on. Do you know what I mean? I don't know why you couldn't have brought Okafor on that side, because I don't really feel there was that much defensive discipline from Aronson. He was drawn out a few times, and I felt maybe an Okafor on that pitch, you maybe win the game. Could you have won the game? Could we dare have won the game against a Newcastle side who looked below average? Someone said it on the Watch On chat. It looked like 2 championship sides, and I think throughout the game it did. It just lacked so much quality. I thought Leeds could have won that game. I really thought. I was like, go on, let's go for it. Go to 2 up top with Metra and DCL, and maybe have Okafor and Nonto either side. But maybe I'm being greedy, but it's a good point. It's a really, really good point, and I don't want to sound like I'm being greedy here. I don't want to sound like I'm downbeat on the lads. I'm really proud of them in that performance, because do you know what? They went into it and there was a lot of downtrodden feeling. We'd lost out on Buonanotte in the last minute. Hamer was playing for Sheffield United today and captaining Sheffield United today, and they were putting out social media posts indicating that he's not going to be leaving. But I think that is very much dependent on, what happens in the window. Things can happen. We're all very, very aware of that. We're adults. The window goes on till Monday, so things can change there. But and then we're getting into the game, and we've had an absolute piss poor week, haven't we? 5-0 to Arsenal, losing out to Sheffield Wednesday under 13s and Barry Bannon. And you're going into this game and you're thinking, this is going to be, honestly, guys, I went into this game and I thought, this is going to be tough. We've got an international break coming up afterwards, and they're going to put 2 or 3 passes here easily. And I actually thought our structure was a lot better. The framework was a lot better. They were picking us a little bit apart, I thought, in some transitional moments between our centre-backs and the left-backs where Jacob Murphy, who I thought was actually better for them, I was surprised when they took him off. But in between the gaps in that first half, I thought they were getting between us, but I thought we got a little bit more compact in that second half, which was good. I thought we actually... I know Jacob Murphy had that strike from outside the box, but I actually thought we were a lot tighter, a lot more compact in that second half. And I thought we actually made it more difficult for him in that second half. I thought they were finding a couple of gaps in that first half with Tonali and Guimaraes finding those little gaps. But overall, it was a really good performance from Leeds United in terms of just keeping the discipline and maintaining structure and framework. Going forward, there's a massive gap. There's a massive Premier League gap. And that is the frank conversation right now. Dan James, I still need to be convinced is a Premier League winger. I've always said this to you guys, and it has always been my harsh criticism that he can do it in the Championship, but you don't get 10 opportunities in the Premier League. You get 1 or 2. You've got to make sure your pass is on point. You've got to make sure your touch is on point. You've got to make sure your crossing and your finishing is on point. And it's not just DJ. You know, it's across the board as well. I thought Lucas Mecha was absolutely outstanding. Outstanding. And I was very, very happy to not see Joel Peru on the pitch today. And I thought you saw the difference. I think when you sit, and this is what I was talking about earlier on, when just because you're Joel Peru and you scored 19 in the Championship doesn't mean that you're going to come up to the Premier League and score 19 or even 5 in the Premier League. I think there's maybe a position there for a little bit of impact if I'm clutching at straws, but DCL and Mecha have to be your starters if that's all you're going with this season. And because you're only going with those two and they're not exactly potent number 9s, you have to get players in and around that attacking space that can be potent, but ultimately can facilitate your forward players. If you don't get facilitators, we're going to struggle throughout the season. We are, because we're going to turn into this almost like low blocky side who can't score goals. We've still not scored a goal in the Premier League in open play, but what I would like to say about that is you have got a real tough opposition in our first 3 there. Everton, I think, will probably end up in the top 8. I've said that from the very beginning of the season. But it was a weak Everton side, but it doesn't matter. We got the points against them. We got all 3 points. Then you go into Arsenal, which was embarrassing. Then you go into Wednesday, which wasn't good. But this was a much better performance for us today. Much better performance, but you have to get people who can help DCL and Mecha. I thought Mecha's hold-up play, this is exactly what I was talking about. You're going over a press, and this is... because I know a lot of you guys in here understand it, but there's still people, believe it or not, who come in and just go, back the team, believe in the process and all this sort of stuff. And it's not like we're hammering Daniel Farke, but you can change from a 4-2-3 to a 4-3-3. That's absolutely fine formation-wise and framework and structure-wise, but you can't build out from the back against these teams. And we didn't do it as much today. You actually saw us being a little bit more pragmatic. Perry's kicking is off. However, you're actually seeing us going to the fullbacks and playing long arching balls, and Mecha is winning everything. Okay? There's your blueprint. There is your blueprint. This is what we were talking about at the start of the season. My God, mind-boggling, I know. Don't play out from the back against some of the best pressers in world football. Don't do it. It's really quite dead simple. But don't do that. Play over the press and you give yourself an opportunity to win free kicks, to win second balls. That is what happens. And Leeds gave themselves chances today by playing over that press, because immediately, within seconds of that game, Newcastle had 3 players on the edge of our box waiting for Perry to kick the ball. So they were waiting, like lions after hyenas. They were waiting for Leeds United to play the ball out from the back. Waiting. So when Leeds didn't do that and we played the ball over the press, I was so happy with that. You've got Mecha, and Mecha was immense. He was absolutely immense today. A lot of the time completely isolated, and that's always the argument for Peru. Oh, he's isolated. Well, Mecha's isolated, and look how many duels he won. Look how many battles he won. And I thought on the ball as well, apart from maybe a few odd touches where he just gave the ball a little bit behind Nonto and a little bit behind James, he was I thought today up against Sven Botman, up against Shah, and up against Dan Burn, who at points were congested and compact as a back 3. When they let, obviously, Kieran Trippier bomb on forward, there'd be a back 3. The ball would come out from Perry. Mecha, you got to think about when a goalkeeper, you don't know where the ball's going as well because he's not great at kicking. Mecha has got to adjust every single time because Perry's kicking is so wayward. So Mecha's got to adjust every single time. So that means he has to go on to Shah, has to go on to Botman, has to go on to Dan Burn. And I barely saw him lose a duel today. He was immense, and his quality on the ball was very good. That is the difference. That's a linker of play. That is what we miss. Now, the next part of it for Mecha is adding that finishing touch. That's what it is. Flipping it. But yes, I think there has got to be a balance today. There has got to be a balance when we look at it overall. Leeds have got a focal point, which is good. You've got 2 focal points. You've got DCL coming on in the second half, who I thought made a decent impact, a couple of decent runs, but you have to bring facilitators in. If you do not bring facilitators in for DCL and Metro, we're going to struggle all season. You cannot be relying on substitute appearances from Jack Harrison and Aronson. It cannot happen. You need to be relying on an Noah Okafor. You need to be relying on a DCL or a Metcha. You need to be relying on a James Justin at points. You need to be relying on 2 more players coming in, minimum. They've got to go and get players to help this team out because they were all absolutely in the trenches today. And they've got to go to Fulham away next and Wolves away next, right? These are big games for Leeds, massive games. We can always look at, it's a different mentality now because we went into these first 3 and going, well, Everton's probably, we need to get something against Everton. But a lot of us were saying 1 point in 9. Okay, we've come out with 4 in 9, yeah? But you've then got now 2 games of which you're looking at away from home and you're thinking, right, these are ones that we can't lose both of these. So the mentality changes. Again, you know, the last 2 that we've played, it's been a little bit like, oh, it's free hit, really. And we've done really well today. Arsenal was embarrassing, but today we've done really well in terms of a reaction to the last week, which has been poor. It's not been a good week for Leeds. But then, as I've just mentioned, everybody, you then get into the next 2 games. The next 2 games away from home, and it's Fulham, which is going to be tough. But you get into Fulham, and then you get into, of course, the game at Wolves. And I think you've got to pick up 3 points in one of those games. I think you have in the Premier League season. You can't just target, you know. But this is it. You know, when we were talking last week and people were saying in the chat, some people, I know it wasn't a lot of you, but people were saying in the chat, these games you can't win anyway. Well, we've just done it. We've just gone and got a point against a team that's going to finish top 5. So this is what you've got to do. You cannot go into these games and go, well, we'll beat Burnley, we'll beat Sunderland, we'll beat Wolves. It doesn't work that way. So you've got to sometimes be compact, all in the trenches, and just pray for a moment of quality. Leeds missed a moment of quality today, but we stayed compact. We were disciplined. Structure, framework. And we could have won it. And we probably should have won it at some stage when we were in between the lines. But you cannot go into some of these big games and just think to yourself, we're not going to win this one. No point. So it can't be the coaching staff and the manager's fault because we were never going to win that anyway. You've got to set up. You've got to set up to get points in every single game because you might get lucky. You might get a point off City. You might get 3 off Villa. You might get a point against Newcastle like we have done today. This was unlikely. A lot of people were saying that we're going to get slapped today, including myself and probably a lot of you. But we've managed to get a point today, which is a big result. Right, let's get into a couple of your comments, shall we? So much better with a focal point. Did well versus Lucas Metch did well against Sven Botman. Jimmy, you just got to pronounce the names, mate. Big differences with James in the Championship. If you got the ball and didn't do anything with it, we get the ball and try again. Yeah, it's all about a possession-based football, mate. If you're regaining the ball instantly, if you're getting the ball back, you're regaining possession. It doesn't really matter. You're dominant. You've got all the ball. They're not even entering our half. DJ just gets the ball off Tanaka again and just goes and goes and goes and goes until one comes off. And maybe 2 or 3 will come off. You just don't get that in the Premier League. Cube de Shorts says, solid point, happy but need creativity. Back of the net says 4 points from 9. Jasper said, Connor, good start, but if we consistently field mostly Championship players, then that's where we'll end up. Fear, we have no money to spend with no sales. Yeah, and just getting onto this comment as well, you know, if you look at it's obviously brilliant point today, everybody. And like I've just said, you need to be compact, you need to be good, you need to be drilled to get these. But if you just look at the bench today, you're looking at Jakobiel, you're looking at Dominic Calvert-Lewin, you're looking at, you know, obviously probably won't put James Justin on, obviously, but you're looking at Noah Okafor there. Now that there is an argument with all three of those that they should be starting. Okay, now I'm not saying that they should be, but at least 2 of them maybe should be starting, or at least coming on ahead of Harrison and Aronson. You know, I need to know what we're recruiting. Are we going to recruit another Ramazani or another Schmidt, which didn't happen long ago, but there was problems with these 2, apparently. Or there's problems, you know, off the ball work with Ramazani, Schmidt, clearly positional problems. I don't want us to recruit players who the manager doesn't want. We've got to recruit players that the manager wants, okay? So I'm hoping he wants Okafor. I'm hoping he does the off-the-ball stuff, because if he's going to just look at Harrison all the time and Aronson, then there's no point in bringing Okafor in. And I'm not just going to make a generalisation here, everybody, and say that's what's going to happen. I'm not saying that. But I do believe Okafor was fit enough to play today. in a certain game, I believe, and I think Daniel Farke sees Jack Harrison as a massive asset this season. But I just wonder at points, is he going to maybe hold back from winning a game to get a point? And will that affect Leeds in the long run? This is what happens with managerial prowess. You've got to really, hedge your bets. Should you go for these 3 points? Because I feel you bring in that game, you go to a 4-4-2, which I think we could play with our system. You build up 4-4-2, you go Mecha, you go DCL up top, you bring Okafor, you have Nonto on one side, and it's effective there. You've got a framework, you've got a structure, but you're going to win the game. You're going to win the game. But I wonder, if you trust Okafor, I wonder, I always say to you guys, I think if you're on the bench, you're fit and readily available to play. I've always been taught that. If you're not fit, you don't play, you don't get in the squad. It makes sense. We've seen that with DCL. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Our home form will determine where we finish the season. Need to get points on the road, though, mate. We do. Albino says, Farke is risk-averse. Yet a point today against a poor Newcastle. We have to win. It's a good point, though, mate. I think I'm going to stress this because we're going to get the comments. And, it's not being true to ourselves, but the comments are going to come on afterwards saying, oh, you're negative. Because if there's any sort of constructive kind of look at football games, there's just the negative lot come in. Do you know what I mean? Who want you to basically sit here for 25 minutes and say how amazing Leeds United are and there's no problems whatsoever and we don't need to do anything in the market. So I am going to say, on the balancing act, good point today, but we know where the gaps are. We know where the gaps are as a fan base, and the 49ers need to invest, but I want to see profiles coming in who the manager wants to use. I don't want to see another Ramazani. I don't want to see a Schmidt. I don't want to see players like this, a Jed Spence. I don't want to see any of this. I want to see players that Farke will use. And Farke is keen on. So we need to get wingers in. If we are going to get a winger in or a cam in or an 8 in who is very good off the ball, you need to get a player who is going to work within a system. Maybe not go out of that system as much as we would like, but that's clearly what Farke does want with what we've seen even with his time at Leeds United and comments about maybe Tanaka and Somerville and Rutter. He wants players to be within a system and to do certain things. So when the team go out there and we get certain individuals, you've got to make sure they fit Daniel Farke. I don't want to start seeing, substitutes on the bench not being used and then Aronson and Harrison coming on every single time. That's what we've got to bear in mind. Right, let's have a look at some more of your comments. Not pretty, but that was good. A good point. 4 points after playing 2 top 4 teams. Look back better after Harrison and DCL came on, says Alan. Goodmanson I thought was brilliant today. Goodmanson should be taking corners. I think that's a top comment there, Keith. We've got to sort that out. That's got to be sorted out. You can't, like how flat the corners are. I don't think Stack's natural at them, to be honest with you. And that's where you bring in like a Fatawu, a Bakwa, a Hamer, hopefully 2 of them, and El Canoes. You've got to get these players on corners. I can't be seeing a 6'4" player where we need to get incremental value in this league, marginal gain. I can't have a 6'4" who's pretty average at taking corners and set pieces on set pieces. Get him in the box. Get him in the box. We want to see more pragmatism and less naivety. Farke delivered, going long from goal kicks. Yep, 100% agree with that, LB. I'm not going to take anything out from him today. I think he learned from last week, which was good. Auntie says, great point after a rubbish week. Thought we were going to get thumped. Everyone put in a shift, but Bogle and Longstaff really stood out. I agree, man. Need a Hamer for that final pass. And set pieces. Agreed, buddy. Agreed. The team's combined XG of 1.01, being the second lowest for a single game since the start of the season. We know where the problems are, man. We know where the problems are. The big difference with James in the Championship, if you got... Oh, we've read that one, haven't we? Sorry, mate. Need risk takers to score goals. 100%. 100%. I agree with you. Goodmanson, Bogle, best 2 today. I'd probably say, Goodmanson was brilliant. Again, I'm really happy with the signing of Goodmanson. Longstaff's best appearance for us so far, which was excellent. Really happy for him because obviously against a boyhood club, and the team he's been with throughout his entire career. I thought in the duels today was brilliant, and that's Longstaff's game. That is Longstaff's game. It's the off the ball work. He's not. I still think in possession is natural. His natural idea, like Gruev, is to go backwards and it's safety first instead of Tanaka back foot forward. Ampadu, in my opinion, his idea is always to go forward first. Stack, his idea is to go forward first all the time. Look at Gruev, you look at Longstaff, it's safety. That's what it is, but you do need that within a team. So I'm not going to sort of recreate. I'm not going to sort of be a revisionist here and say that, Longstaff's brilliant on the ball. He's this, that, and the other. We know what Longstaff is. You know, he's going to be good in duels. He's athletic. He's box to box, and he's a runner. That's what he is. But on the ball, he's not going to give you great output. He's just not. Matt says too many players playing without intelligence tonight. Poor passing from Nonto and Bogle after they'd done the hard work, and that's what needs to improve, Matt. It was, I thought at points when we got into these positions, it was a lot of low football IQ. And that is where you need a Bilal El Khanous. It's where you need a Delane Bakwa. It's where you need a Gustavo Hamer. It's the intelligence in these positions to be calm. You know, the ball gets to you in these positions and you're able to see play a lot slower than everybody else. You know, the game slows down and you think to yourself, right, I'm going to pin it there. You know, you're going to split the centre-backs. You're going to put the ball between the centre-back and the left-back. You know, you're going to play a flighted ball. But I have to press on this. I have to know that Farke wants Gus Hamer because Gus Hamer is a maverick. Does he want a maverick? Does he want someone who is going to lose the ball? Gus Hamer will lose the ball. Delane Bakwa will lose the ball. And Abdul Fatawu will lose the ball. But that is because they are risk takers. Pablo Hernandez used to lose the ball. Samu Saiz used to lose the ball. But they're risk takers. That's what risk takers do. Because they're the only players in the team that do that. They're luxury players to an extent. I know that term's gone out of fashion now, but you cover these players with physical players. You almost bubble wrap them to enable them, to facilitate them to facilitate. That's what you've got to do, and you have to have players like that in your team. We saw when Ramazani's left that maybe it's the ball retention that Farke's not a fan of, the off-the-ball work, but you're going to need that. You're going to need that because you're not going to get that complete player who's brilliant off the ball, diligent. You Jack Harrison off the ball who just works, and he's literally more of a left back now. But then in the final third, you're going to get that absolute exuberance, that class that's going to just win you games. It's very rare to find, and those players are playing at the top level, the top level, the upper echelon of the Premier League. So you have to go and get players that Farke wants, and that is my message right now to the One Leadsers, all the people in the chat right now. It's all well and good turning around saying, get players, go get players, go get players. But we need to know they're right for Farke. We need to know they are, because we've seen players come in over the last 12 months, last however many months, and they've come in and he's not wanted them. So there's been no point. And a lot of people were saying in the Watch On chat, is that going to be Okafor? I don't know. Will he turn around and choose Harrison and Aronson in tighter games over Okafor? I think that will happen. And will he go to Noah Okafor over maybe a James and a Nonto? I don't know. Or maybe a new signing. But these are all things that we have to bear in mind. All things that we have to bear in mind, because really, really important that we get players, not just for the club, but for Daniel Farke if he's going to be our manager going forward, because there's no point otherwise. You've got to find players who fit his system. Mr. P says, I'm tired of watching Leeds play without football IQ and poor decision-making. We need a player not afraid to take on players and break through teams. I agree. But that stipulation has to be there. We all have to understand that Farke has to want him, because we've seen if he doesn't want them, there's no point. There's no point. So you're bringing in a Maverick, but if you bring in Mavericks, like we're talking about with El Khanous, like we're talking about with Hamer, like we're talking about with Buonanotte, you're bringing in a Maverick, there has to be that balance that you know that Maverick is going to win your games. So cover these Mavericks with defensive players that can cover ground, because they're going to lose the ball. So then you've got to regain the ball, but you've got to trust in that process that Maverick is going to win your games. Let's have a look. We kept a top Premiership team at bay today. Credit is due, but sure, deficiencies are clear, 100%. Yeah, but listen, as you and Joe are the best, thank you so much, Poppy. But listen, it's a really good point for us today. And there is an objective now for Leeds United, isn't there, everybody? The objective is to go out and get offensive players that are going to make a big difference to Leeds. But I tell you what, in midfield, I thought, and I think we've looked good. I think this year we've looked good so far. You know, apart from the Arsenal game. So maybe 2/3 of it. So 2/3 of it, at least at Ellen Road, because apparently ROA form's terrible. But I think in the midfield, in both games at Ellen Road, we've looked strong. We've looked competitive against Everton and Newcastle. And you know, we've not conceded goals at Ellen Road, which is good. You've got to make it a fortress. That's numero uno. And that is really important. Really, really important. Back of the net says the positive is we can all see what's needed. Exactly, mate. And we all know that we've got a solid basis right now. We've got a solid base. I really like what I've seen with Stack. Gruev is Gruev. He is what it is. He's never going to be my favourite player, guys. You all know that, but he can do a job. He was better than I thought he would be today. Longstaff was excellent. It was his best performance in a Leeds shirt. You've got Tanaka and Ampadu coming back. That's a good midfield for me. It's different profiles. Okay? You look at the back line, I do want to see Beal in there. And that's not a problem on Strout, but I do some. But then Strout's the best header of the ball we've got. At set pieces. I think. You know, especially when we're attacking them, but you've got to get someone who can take set pieces. Set pieces could keep Leeds United up. We could, if we'd have got to the back end of the game today and we'd have put a brilliant set piece in. I was watching Gustavo Hamer today against Middlesbrough. The balls that he was putting in were unbelievable, whipped, pacey. Just needs a touch every time. So yeah, you've got to get players in there, and if we've got these big bodies in there, you've got to facilitate these players. You've got to facilitate these players with decent balls in. Of course you have. Pascal was good today. I know he was good, mate, but you're looking at your signing on the bench. Are you going to keep Beal on the bench? Is that what we're going to do? And I know it's good depth. I understand that, but you've not brought Beal to keep him on the bench. You've not brought Okafor to keep them on the bench. You just haven't. You brought these players in to make a difference. So, but yes, happy with it. Hope you're all happy with it, everybody. We're going to leave it there. Get involved in the chat, everybody. Comment afterwards as well. Thank you so much for joining me. We're going to be back tomorrow. We've got the 5 things that we learned coming tomorrow. We've also got the hardline, busy day on the channel. And then Monday, it is deadline day, which is definitely going to be a busy one for Leeds United. I'm going to have my yellow tie on. So, listen, I'm sure I'll see you over there, everybody. Tune in to One Leeds throughout the full day. It was brilliant last time out. Let's do it again. It's been an absolute pleasure. See you in a bit, guys. Cheers.